Geoffrey Chaucer, 24 Canterbury Tales and General Prologue, dated 1387 to 1400. The 30 pilgrims are described by Chaucer, who becomes another character in the poem drama, a fellow traveller to Canterbury Cathedral from London. The meeting place is the Tabard Inn, Southwark. As so often with oldie with an E tales of England, the tavern is the normal convening space for everyday life and people. The Tabard, renamed the Talbot Inn, 1676, is eventually put to rest by the late Victorians, demolished in the 1870s, leaving an empty square yard used for storage and vehicles. With things like this going on, it makes you reflect on the true impressiveness and scale of cities like London, Paris, and Berlin in Chaucer's time. The pilgrims are treated in a satirical and critical way by Chaucer, who's often hinting at what he may not like to say outright. The titles of these travellers, their professions, are straight from the late Middle Ages, as mythologized and Shakespeareanized. The knight, yeoman, prioress nun, doctor of physic, miller, etc., all the stations associated with urban and rural life in a strongly Christian country. Suggesting, then, that Jesuit intelligence agents are beginning to gain ground in infiltrating Christianity and thereby politics and finances in Britain. Not yet at that openly, opulently rich and religiously disinterested period of the Medici popes, brought back to life with an all-star cast by Netflix 2016, 28 million on the first season, portraying all the corruption but a little late 400 years on. The Jesuits, being highly educated and useful, through trust, sometimes marrying into families, others taking over the monasteries, ergo books, flow of information, education. Remembering this coincides with the earliest forays into the tropics and further afield to gain much greater plunder. The breaking of a stable working system of self-governing citadels or counties, something to be done gradually but from within. The Reformation then in the 1500s could be considered a pushback or a way of splitting power between Rome and the Church of England. The Machiavellian politicking associated with courtly life during the time of Henry VIII points to subversive manoeuvring away from public view. Things that affect culture and traditions alongside select rewriting of histories, part of which being that Christianity was introduced to Britain by Roman missionaries circa 300 AD. That just a few centuries later, masterpiece edifices like Canterbury Cathedral are going up. Archbishop Thomas Becket becomes a localized pope of line since Augustine. Similar heroic stories behind them. Becket is murdered on the steps to add prestige, distract from the music prayer, creep in with the secular. These religious figureheads, many, are entombed on location like pharaohs at these cathedrals. From the translation, General Prologue, verse 59. A knight there was, and he a worthy man, who, from the moment that he first began to ride about the world, loved chivalry, truth, honour, freedom, and all courtesy. The old world attributes and aspirations for a champion, but the Catholic Church had managed to find a cause to transfer these energies to their ends, land grabbing. Quote, verse 74. In Latvia raided he, and Russia. No christened man of his degree. In far Granada at the siege was he, at Algeciras and in Belvary. The summoner and pardoner are petty officials of the Vatican. The latter comes to tell you of the crimes an ecclesiastical court might suspect you of. The other collects monies by the selling of indulgences, a get-out-of-jail card for aforementioned charges. A giant scam at play to subversively impoverish and control the population through fear. These characters may also stand for a crossing over of authority from religious to secular. As the representative of God, a pope could effectively act as he sees fit. A sense of awe in the church and its agents and rituals. Threats of original sin and hellfire serving as a focus for life's meaning before anyone had heard of heliocentrism and evolution theory. The summoner is described, verse 639. Well loved he garlic, onions, aye, and leeks, and drinking of strong wine as red as blood. Then would he talk and shout as madman would. Verse 689. With him there rode a gentle pardoner, of Roncesvalles, his friend and his compeer. Straight from the court of Rome had journeyed he. Loudly he sang, Come hither, love, to me. The popes in AD 1400 were two, Boniface and Benedict XIII. Coming back to the Reformation, it was one of these schisms that may become ways of ruling different cultures more effectively for a while. The public were no doubt recipients of whatever second-hand information of what was happening in the Council of Pisa, 1409, where another candidate is added to the runnings, and culminating in the Council of Constance, 1414 to 1418, where all of them are rejected, and Pope Martin V acclaimed High Pontiff. It shows how these important decisions are made on the spot by groups outside individual nations, like NATO. The people the Catholic Church could employ to do the different jobs of implementing their agenda based on their will to power or personal reward, a susceptibility to brutality or coercion, all under the oath of loyalty. Further information on the summoner, verse 663. In his control he had as he pleased the young people of the diocese, and knew their secrets, and was the adviser of them all. of the pardoner, verse 703. In one day he got himself more money than the parson got in 2 months, and thus, with feigned flattery and tricks, he made fools of the parson and the people. Nobody probably expected the denial of Genesis and creationism to come from within the church. Those clergy who refuse to comply may be replaced, while a new generation waiting in the eaves, students of the Jesuit agents, with conceptions of one globe they have a right to rule. One thing that always matters, land ownership. Circa 1400 shows the Catholics very much in control. There was also the ability to raise armed forces, mostly mercenaries, under banners such as a royal family or the Holy Roman Empire. It is the Catholics behind different wars in the next century, the Reconquista in Iberia, crusading in the Middle East, and the Hussite Wars against some Germans trying to hold out against the expansion of influence. On the other hand, Britain had no standing army in Chaucer's time. King Henry IV could call on help, but couldn't force conscription from the state. The idea of the Middle Ages king who truly served the people, the actual philosophy behind the position of the Arthurian legends, a far cry from King Charles. However strong a ruler, though, with enough corruption at the regional grassroots level, it becomes enough to make him or her less relevant. Chaucer himself, it turns out, is a pre-Copernican astronomer, writing a treatise on the astrolabe, the ancient Greek navigational device, long ignored by academia as dealing with a geocentric, Ptolemaic model of the universe, particularly the circular movement of the heavenly lights. In the Franklin's, which means landowner, tale, he describes the effect of these lights on each other in relation to tides as well. Verse 1049, that just as her, the moon's, desire is to be kindled and ignited by your fire, which she follows you very attentively, just so the sea desires naturally to follow her. The Squire's tale is more astrological, the references showing the strong impact Italian/Greek early Renaissance ideas were having on people like Chaucer through courtly diplomacy and travel. Quote, Phoebus the sun was radiant and clear, because he was close to exaltation, entering the face of Mars, and entering its mansion in Aries. Chaucer's being a member of Parliament, it can be appreciated he's going to have particularly strong views on some religious and political issues. He is of the privileged, but his family are merchants and pub owners, which means he had unique insight on the wider range of society. For juxtaposition, quote, there was a good man, of religion too, a country parson, poor I warrant you. This one exemplifies the real Christian values. This fine example to his flock he gave, that first he wrought and afterwards he taught. Out of the gospel then that text he taught, seeing as, quote, he was a shepherd and not mercenary, and in all his teachings prudent and benign. Below, the Talbot Inn, shown in the detailed picture from the original book. Everything looks in top condition. The straight lines and carvings on the stone arch they process out of. The steeple's sharp points background. Underneath this 19th century engraving it says, from a sketch taken shortly before its demolition. Above, a feast with all the pilgrims. Round tables become less popular after the Renaissance. The people don't need any reminders of flat earth. Right? The space becomes stables from 1900. The cathedral's fan-vaulted ceilings and the whole layout in terms of resonant chambers and passages. Every indication is that the use of these churches was originally for sacred music, prayer and celebration. Europe's largest pipe organ. The website Atlas Obscura, revealing name for the motives of such information platforms, meaning to conceal or make dark earth, tells it is at St. Stephen's, Germany. This building is a rebuild after fire narrative going back to 1682. Quote, the organ at St. Stephen's took shape gradually over the course of centuries, which hardly makes sense. You would install a musical instrument in its entirety. However, it goes on. 17,774 pipes, 223 registers, and 4 chimes. Each part of the organ was built separately.